Oh, hello there, and welcome to Phil Talking D20. So, slight hiatus, as usual, mainly because I've been trying to fettle and refine my recording setup. That hasn't quite gone to plan. However, things are in hand for a new setup that I was very, very, very close to getting, and then it all fell apart, and I've had to start over. So back to recording videos like this, but hopefully next week I will be back up to speed with a new camera, new setup, which will make, hopefully, life a bit easier. Now, the playtest. Yeah, there's a playtest going on. Another one. Like, it's getting increasingly difficult to keep up with Paizo and the rate at which they are publishing, creating, and I think I'm going to use the word spamming content for 2E. You need to have, I'd need to do this job full time to keep up with reviews on all their content. It's bonkers. And my first reaction for about 1 millisecond was, oh, it's another caster one where there's more magic classes. And then I thought about it for more than a second and realised that's not strictly true. So this playtest is for what they're calling the Dark Archive. And it's scheduled for a release around Gen Con 2022. So it's a ways off, but that's good because it gives them plenty of time to fettle and refine and take all our feedback and do all the stuff that makes the classes how we all like them, which is brilliant. And when I was thinking about, oh, it's more casters, I realised that's not actually true because we've had, obviously, Guns and Gear, which was 2 combatants, and they're coming out in the not too distant future, which is Gunslinger and the Tech Wizard. Not that he's a tech wizard, but obviously those 2 kind of support classes, if you like. One being a melee, one being a ranged combatant, the other one being like a support combatant. And then we had Secrets of Magic, which has obviously just come out to rave reviews. Except the 2 classes in there aren't actually casters, even though it's a book about magic. Which, when you think about it, seems illogical, but actually makes perfect sense. One of them is a tank, the Summoner. He's a 10 hit point class. It's a tank class with a little bit of magic. And then the Sword Mage character is a combatant, a secondary combatant with some magic. So actually, it's quite interesting how they've approached this because they're not giving us uniform kind of this one's a combatant and this one's a cluster. They're mixing things up quite nicely, which I'm enjoying. So, what's in this playtest? The first one is the Psychic. Now, to give you a quick rundown on this, 6 hit points plus con, intelligence or charisma for your key abilities, a handful of skills to be trained in, 3 plus your intelligence modifier. You get occultism, simple and unarmed attacks, unarmored defense. They don't get armors, and then obviously we get the usual ancestries and backgrounds, initial proficiencies, and all that kind of juicy stuff. They get psi cantrips and amps. The unique magic of your mind manifests as psi cantrips, which are a kind of focus cantrip. So they're really trying to mess with our heads now. Like other cantrips, you can cast psi cantrips as often as you like, and they're automatically heightened to half your level rounded up. Your psi cantrips are in addition to the cantrips you choose from the occult list as part of the psychic spellcasting. Generally, only feats can give you more psi cantrips. And then there's obviously some more bloody blah. At first level, you learn 3 psi cantrips determined by your choice of conscious mind, which is one of these class pathways that we're now kind of established in with the 2E meta, which is the thing that basically means that you have the framework of your class that is fairly linear, and then you have normally around 3 pathways that will kind of bend that key concept in a slightly different direction or enable it to do some additional kind of tricks to keep classes fresh and to stop them clashing. Like I said, I remember playing D&D 3.5, and this is kind of unilaterally kind of true of a lot of games. You don't get a lot of choice. If you were a ranger in 3.5, every ranger was the same ranger. You changed their name, and maybe you chose some different feats at a few, every other level, or every third level. But broadly speaking, everything else was the same. So they've done a really good job of mixing things up with this kind of three paths kind of approach. And maybe they've played a lot of Call of Duty and know that 3-lane map design is the best map design. Who knew? So, amps are specific thought forms. This is going to be a good one to read, isn't it? That alter the nature of psycantrips. When you cast a psycantrip, you can amp it up, which is a 90s dance craze. By spending one focus point to add the effects described in the spell's amp heading. Wicked idea. Really like this. Very cool mechanic. So we know we've got focus spells. We can regenerate focus points with a 10-minute rest, or by an activity specifically enshrined within the meta rules that enables an action to regenerate our focus points. And now they've bolted these on to existing cantrips as a way of adding more punch to cantrips. Cantrips are already pretty punchy. As you level up, they naturally progress, which is a wonderful thing. That's a great addition to the magic system in Pathfinder 2e. But now having this extra little bell and whistle on top is very, very cool. So yeah, I'm up for that. Hopefully we can find some examples to kind of demonstrate what they mean by that. And again, these are generated via feats and things like that in terms of the usual way that you regenerate and get additional focus points. So that's cool. It's another restricted spells per day class. So 3 cantrips, and then obviously 2 second, 2 first, 2 third, 2 fourth, and so on. It doesn't go over 2 from the baseline, but obviously there are things that will tweak that in the form of bonus spells and things that you get from your class pathway that you've chosen. So let's have a quick look at those, just to give you an idea of how they flavor flav. Now, the first one, where is that? Okay, so subconscious mind is the first one they've listed here, which is these pathways. A psychic's power is born in the depths of their psyche, far from the surface of their realization. Your subconscious mind might represent the way that your power comes to you naturally, or it might be a framework you use to safely access the limitless potential of your mind. Emotional acceptance. The mind's truths come not in learned words or mathematical formulas, but deeper feelings. Right, okay, so these are the 2 different tiers. You've got the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. Right, okay, I'm with you now. Emotional acceptance. This is where they start to break those down as pathways. Key ability. Your key ability score is charisma. Emotional components. When you cast a spell you gain from the psychic class, you replace any material components with semantic components and replace any verbal components with emotion components. So you call up and hold a specific feeling. Okay, that's an interesting way of looking at that. If you are affected by a harmful emotion effect, the discordant emotions sap some of your concentration, causing your cantrips, including psycantrips, to heighten to a level 1 level lower than normal. Okay, so that actually makes use of the existing emotional mechanics that exist within the framework. When you've seen the effects kind of sublist that are on certain specific abilities and spells, there is one that is emotion. Elves have one where they get I think a +1 on will saves versus emotional effects, for example. So they've been able to key an existing mechanic into this so that if you are afflicted by an emotional effect, it can have ramifications on your ability to cast. Very unique, very cool. Precise discipline. What else have we got here? That is intelligence, calculation components. When you cast a spell, you gain through the psychic class. You replace any material with semantic components and any verbal components with calculation components. Okay, and again, a similar kind of framework to the previous one. Conscious mind, granted spells, surface psi cantrips, and then deeper psi cantrips. So granted spells, you automatically add the spells listed here to your spell repertoire in addition to those you gain through the spellcasting feature. At first level, you gain a first level spell and you learn the other spells on the list as soon as you gain the ability to cast psychic spells of that level, learning second level spells at third, so on and so forth. Surface psi cantrips. These are the psi cantrips you gain automatically at first level, okay, and then deeper psi cantrip. You gain this cantrip later in your career by taking the deeper psi breakthrough feat. What else have we got here? Okay, here's an example, apparently, allegedly. Mage Hand. So we know the spell Mage Hand. This is the amp for spell, for Mage Hand. Your added focus increases your hand's telekinetic finesse. When you cast a spell, you can have the Mage Hand grasp an attended object, obviously not something you can normally do with a spell, if it's attended by you or a willing ally, and is an easy to access location such as a sheathed weapon or a potion on a belt. The hand grasps and holds the object before the hand moves the object. The item must still be within the bulk limit of Mage Hand. Oh, okay. Okay, so that's quite a nice little tweak to a simple spell. And then Telekinetic Projectile. There is an amp and a heightened amp example here, which is useful to see. So Telekinetic Projectile, when you amp it, you fling objects with even more force. The damage changes to a D8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier, which I think is up from a D6 from memory. On a critical, you push a target back 5 feet and deal double damage, and then it heightens +1. It heightens by a D8 instead of by a D6. Nice. Very interesting. Oh, Detect Magic's got an amp. Your pulse of detection helps you gain a sense of nearby magic strengths or weaknesses. As long as you detect the presence of magic, you gain a +1 status bonus on saves against magic for 3 rounds. Cool. And then it heightens at 3rd and it heightens at 4th. Very interesting. So that's quite a cool list of nudge in 10. Okay, so actually they've got a really good breakdown of a lot of the spells and their like amp abilities and how they've kind of factored those in. So that's very cool. Then we've got the usual trope of so the one you always get lightning reflexes at some point in a class, for example. Except they've reflavoured it for this particular class and they've called it Precognitive Reflexes. Minor clairvoyance ensures you can react to threats slightly before they occur. Your proficiency rank in reflex save increases to expert. So yes, it's a pre-existing mechanic. Yes, it's exactly the same, but they have reflavoured it in that kind of spider sense way instead of just having improved reactions. I quite like that. It's a nice little detail touch. Obviously, Great Fortitude is in there. Weapon expertise kicks in at 11. These are quite normal things. Personal barrier is a new feature by the looks of it. Okay, no. Again, they've reflavoured the advancement in your armor class. For example, subtle telekinetic fields dampen and deflect incoming blows. Your proficiency rank in unarmored defense increases to expert. So obviously that's a 13th level class feature and is something that pre-exists in other classes, but it's that cool way of reflavouring the concept for that kind of around the table discussion of Flavor Flav. So I like that. Let's have a quick look. Are there any instant jump out feats? Warp Space, level 2. That sounds interesting. As you unleash your spell, you use your magic to bend and distort space, allowing your spell to strike your target from an unexpected vector. Use this amp in place of the Psy cantrip's normal amp entry. Oh, I like that already. You could detect magic from behind them. That's a joke, obviously. That wouldn't really be that useful. Let's have a look. Okay, so it must be a ranged Psy cantrip for you to apply this additional option of amp. And the amp goes as follows. Choose a square within 30 feet and determine your spell's line of effect and line of sight from there, as well as whether creatures have cover against the spell. Any bonus from cover the target has is reduced by 2 against this spell. The spell still can't exceed its normal range as measured from you. But I interpret that as being able to use that amp to even possibly negate cover completely if you choose to position the spell. Simple example, you've got a barricade and a combatant that you're opposed on the other side. You could choose to have the spell come out behind them and go back towards you, obviously as long as you're out of range, and negate that cover completely, as opposed to firing it straight at them and them getting cover. So that's quite interesting. I like that as an idea, and I like the way that there are these additional amps as a feature. Unleash Self-Defense, a level 1 feat. You cast 2 beneficial spells on yourself or an ally this encounter, each on a different round. The conflict adverse aspects of your personality float calmly to the surface, causing your mind to subconsciously deflect incoming attacks. It comes at the cost of reduced fatal intent behind your spells. Okay, that's an interesting idea. While this psyche is unleashed, you gain a +1 status bonus to your AC and to 1 saving throw of your choice, decided at the start. All of your spells that don't have the death trait gain the non-lethal trait. And then the drawback is your influence, the pacifist influence in your mind makes it difficult for your spells to strike a killing blow. You take a penalty to spell damage rolls equal to the level of the spell, and you take a -1 penalty to spell attack rolls and DCs of spells that deal damage, including those that apply the drain condition, disease, or poison. Cool, okay, but again, if you are playing an active buffer as opposed to an active kind of damage dealing caster, buffing your armor class and saves isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're not planning on using a lot of damage saves and you're planning on doing a lot of support casting. So that's quite a unique concept to kind of build from. Now, it's clearly another unique caster. But it's not. It's also different enough to stuff that we've had recently to have a place at the table, which is good. Because, like I said, my initial reaction was, "Oh, more casters." And then I thought about it, was just like, well, we've not really had kind of traditional casters. You know, like everyone knows wizard, everyone knows sorcerer. We've got this established pantheon of casters. You know, D&D meddled with it a little bit and added warlock. Pathfinder meddled with it a bit and added witch. But that's the gist of it. We've got this idea of, or you'll have X number of spells and you'll be a boom bang wizard, or you'll be a buff support cleric, or these do a good job of filling in niches that, in fairness, I didn't even think were there, which they've somehow found. Like the summoner turning out to be a really, really good tank class with very capable combat if you choose the right kind of paths and feats and options to go down that route, with a little bit of magic, which I quite like. So yeah, I think this is genuinely a very good alternative to sorcerer or wizard, and is very much defining its own space, especially with those amps. that's a very, very cool and unique feature that no one else really has. The closest you can get to that, I think, would be, in a vague and woolly way, sorcerers kind of get that feature where they get those specific spells they can pick. What do they call that? Oh, I can't remember what they call that. I was just chatting with one of my players because he's just got it. Signature spells. There you go. But this makes them unique. I like that. That's very cool. So, the second playtest character is a really weird looking. This guy has got more trinkets on him than I've ever seen. Was my initial. He's called Mios, and he is a thaumaturge or thermatage or a thaumaturge. Anyone have any idea how to say the thaumaturge, the thaumaturge, the thaumaturge? Thaumaturge. Thermatage. Either way, it doesn't sound like I'm saying a real word. If if someone just clicked in at this point, they may fear I'm having a stroke. So don't panic. Don't call an ambulance on my behalf. I'm just saying a ridiculously difficult word badly. Now, the world is full of the unexplained, magic, gods, and even stranger things. Even stranger than gods and magic. You scavenge the best parts of every magical tradition and folk practice to glean deeper laws. To glean deeper laws of the universe. Old wives' tales having some truth to them is a classic example of this, I fear. You've built up a collection of Esoterica, a broken holy relic here, a spring of mistletoe there. Now this one is, some people have mentioned that it's kind of built into the view of the Inquisitor, and it may kind of be stepping on the Inquisitor's toes, but I don't think it is. I think it fits alongside the Inquisitor quite well. I think we're almost getting into kind of grim, dark, kind of horror settings with Inquisitors and Thermatages as kind of, witch hunter general-esque kind of parties. And obviously this is clearly built into kind of Lovecraftian horror and the Dark Tapestry, which Pathfinder have done an amazing job of supporting, considering how obviously there are plenty of those kind of existing kind of Cthulhu obviously being the immediate go-to, and all of its sundry games that come out of Cthulhu. But yeah, this is them kind of bringing Cthulhu back into 2e, because the Dark Tapestry has been a prevalent, factor in Pathfinder 1, and that is its origin and its inspiration, if you like. That kind of Lovecraftian Cthulhu-esque kind of nightmare horror from the great beyond. And both of these are clearly geared up for those kind of settings. Very much kind of gearing into that kind of a setting. I think the Psychic will do a much better job of transitioning into normal, non kind of Cthulhu-esque kind of campaigns. The jury's still out on the Thermatage. I'm sure it will work. I'm not saying it won't work. I think that it's very specialist in a little niche, but in a good way, because it's not, again, they've managed to find a space for a unique class and created something that's quite kind of cool and independent. So the usual blah blah. Charisma is key ability. 8 hit points a level. Expert perception. Expert in will, so you can make all the will saves against horrible outsiders. Arcana, nature, occultism, and religion are all trained as base, which is brilliant. You are literally built to make knowledge checks against monsters and have something in your pocket to help beat them, which is brill. You get a couple of additional skills on top of that based on your intelligence modifier. You're trained in simple and martial. Again, this is like a support combatant skill fighter-esque role. that it's generally built into as a niche. It can use medium armor and light armor, so it can take the hits. Again, the usual tropes of ancestry backgrounds. It gets dubious knowledge, esoterica, implement, and empowerment, and then 2 initial proficiencies and a Thermatage feat. So, under esoterica, the first feature is find flaws. It's 1 action, once per round. You determine a creature's weakness, whether a literal weakness or a metaphysical one, using recall knowledge, and they've baked all the skills in, so you've always got something to roll with. Like I said, this is like, it's a bit like how the investigator is built to kind of pull apart and find clues, and then use similar abilities to kind of target and debilitate opponents, depending on which kind of pathway you take. The Thermatage is just a lore machine. It's designed as a concept to be able to keep a party clued up on their environment, their opponents, those kind of. And when I say environment, I don't mean like a ranger making survival traps to lead you through, the woods to get somewhere. More about the environment of your enemy and how they might be operating against you in the unseen, in the veil of. It's very, very cool concept. As a dubious knowledge, to give you an example of what they're talking about here, as a Thermatage, you always see connections between things, even if some of them are misleading. You gain the dubious knowledge skill feat. If your background already granted you that, you gain an additional lore skill feat instead, which for this class is very useful, because the more you can rely on your skills, the more likely you are to successfully buff yourself and your party and help you overcome things, which is kind of what this guy's bag is in a nutshell. So you can just keep dumping find flaw as an action once per round until you nail it. Critical success, you learn all the creature's resistances, weaknesses, and immunities. If you would have learned any of them already from recall knowledge, you learn different information instead. You can use the esoteric antithesis without spending an additional action. So you can basically just absolutely cripple the GM by going, hey guys, this one's got a weakness to fire. Fireball it. All the time. Without that making the roll to recall knowledge, failing and going, uh-oh, we're not quite sure what we're up against. This guy can just be like, no, I can do that every round. Dump, dump, dump. Critical, I know everything. Which is fab. It's a real, the Thermatage is a real force multiplier, I think is the military parlance, in the way that you can constantly get an advantage, or because a weakness is an advantage to you as a party. It just is. And if they haven't got any, you get information. You would get information on their likely tactics or their likely kind of, bravery. If there's something that you can drive off, if there is a way that you can communicate with them. Do you know what I mean? It's not just, I know it's got a weakness, target it. You've got some depth to it, depending on GM and player group, because you might not go in for that. So to clarify, esoteric antithesis, which is normally 1 action, but you can do it for free with the recall knowledge if you crit. Well, not recall knowledge, but it is essentially recall knowledge. You search through your esoterica, which is random stuff and trinkets. So it might be like a saint's finger bone that's got engravings on it, and the pickled eyeball of a famous bishop. Those kind of random, like medieval kind of trinkets that they put great value and superstition and kind of worth into. That's kind of your esoterica. That's what they mean by that kind of stuff. You search through your Esoterica to find the right trinket that will apply a weakness to your attacks against the creature you found flaws in. You interact to apply specific Esoterica to yourself and your weapons. You can perform this interact action with the hand holding your implement. No rude puns, please. Your unarmed and weapon strikes against said creature become magical if they weren't already. You cause them to apply one of the creature's weaknesses, even if they don't deal the correct type of damage. If the creature has a weakness with a value of 2 plus half your level or higher, set the type of weakness to the creature's highest weakness. So, effectively, you have a big bag of trinkets and tools that you can use to go, I've got this silver candelabra, so I'm going to duct tape it to my sword, and now my sword does silver damage. Oh, and this monster also has a weakness to fire, so I'm going to light the candles, and I'm going to do fire. I think that is the best way I can pundit that into a framework of amusement. But I like that. I like the idea of being this slightly kind of, jack of all trades kind of, individual that has built up this huge mental and physical library of folk lore and superstition, because we obviously live in an age of science and the internet, and it's just a case of who needs to have a conversation anymore, because when someone says, what's that thing, the thing that does the thingy, and everyone goes, oh, I don't know, and then someone goes, oh, Google it, and that's the end of the conversation because you've got the answer. Not like that in those days. A medieval world is full of fear and the unknown and superstition and all the trappings that those kind of things entail. The moon, we know it's a great big lump of cheese that rotates our planet and affects the tides. To older cultures, it was a far more spiritual and magical thing that transcended through the heavens. It had much more meaning. Whereas now, obviously, it's where we get all our cheese from. Not many people know that, so don't let that get out. That's the global cheese supply up there. That could cause panic if people realise there might be a cheese shortage. Much like there is in my country a fuel shortage, even though there isn't. But that's a whole different story, because people are a bit silly. So, you can already get a really good angle on this character, this kind of ethos behind their kind of mantra of building it. You are a brilliant support combatant, and yeah, you might not be as potent as the paladin, not that he's a paladin anymore, the champion. You might not be as potent as the barbarian, but you will be able to constantly get, your damage through, and also help other people get damage through. That's the real kind of thing. You're like a secondary combatant come buffer, which is quite a cool and unique idea. So there's the usual tropes from here on. Vigilant sensors, you're getting that increase to master in perception. Those kind of things are already kind of built in and ready to go. Implements, just to kind of clarify what they're referring to. For the playtest, we're focusing on 5 implements, but the final class will have a total of 9, thrice 3. I'm sure there's a Monty Python pun in that. But anyway. Amulet. So then you choose a type of amulet, and they've got implement, and one of them is amulet. Another one is a chalice. What else have they put in here? A lantern, a wand, and a weapon. And they make sense. That's a classic. Now I'm going to look at chalice, because I like the fact they've chosen the word chalice instead of goblet, because it has much more Indiana Jones vibes. Which again is kind of like, if you were going to build an Indiana Jones style character, kind of looking at multi-classing, because it's very hard to just pin one class onto a very cool and dynamic movie character. but Thermatage would be a pretty good place to start in the way that he has that huge plethora of knowledge on Esoterica, on the ancient world. You know, he dabbles in Egypt, he dabbles in, you know, in Mayan and kind of Amazonian cultures with knowledge and expertise. So, you know, like this has got some pretty cool stuff going on. Chalice. Chalice implements are vessels that fill with liquid. Yes, because they're a chalice. Um, associating them with healing, nourishment, and life. Your chalice might be a traditional cup or goblet, but it could also be a small amphora, a polished gourd, or even a hollowed out skull. Good times. The dwarves have a nickname for those. What do they call them? Troll something or other. They hollow out kind of troll skulls and make them into big tankards to prove how hard they are. That's a Warhammer thing, I think, from memory. That's my esoteric knowledge of dwarves. Now, it says we have an action here. So, chalice implements are associated with the astrological signs of the mother and the newlyweds, as well as the sea dragon. Innate, is that innate benefit or initiate? Initiate benefit. While holding I think they might mean innate, and I might just be misreading it. While holding the chalice, you can drink from it or feed its liquid to an ally to improve their health. You gain the drink from chalice action. It's a one action, once per round, and you are holding the chalice implement. You drink from the liquid that slowly collects in your chalice or administer it to an ally. The drinker chooses whether to take a sip or to drain the contents. A sip grants the drinker an amount of temporary hit points equal to 2 plus half your level that lasts until the end of the next turn. And then if you choose to drain it, drinking deep instead heals 3 hit points for each level you have. After your chalice is drained, it's left with only its slowly collecting dregs. The chalice can't be drained again, though it can still be sipped from. If 10 minutes pass, so this is like a focus spell, if 10 minutes pass without anyone drinking from the chalice, it refills itself and can be drained again. So this is another clever take on the existing mechanic of focus spells. That, for me, sold. Great class. Again, offering unique features that other classes have, but not stepping on their toes, because you can never heal as much as a paladin, not a cleric, or you can never lay on as much hands as the champion. But you've got cool and unique options, and you can bet your bottom dollar that there are feats that build into these specific, features of your class, like every other class has. So, let's jump in and have a quick look at some of those feats to see if there are any that are obviously kind of tying in. You can get a familiar. There you go. Yeah, there's already one there that's called Talisman Esoterica, which is one of the options you've got. Turn away misfortune. Pact of Fey Glamour. That sounds dangerous. Dabbling in the Fey. Terrible things, the Fey. You've sworn a pact with Fey powers, granting you otherworldly appearance of your dreams in exchange for oaths of hospitality. As long as you keep your end of the bargain, your base appearance changes indefinitely to any one appearance you wish within the bounds of possibility for your ancestry. This effect can't be counteracted or removed except by violating the pact. Additionally, you can cast Illusionary Disguise as a primal innate spell once per day, using your class DC of your spell DC, if you prefer. In exchange, you promise to accept any Fey's request for hospitality, granting them food, drink, and lodgings for up to 3 days and 3 nights. Wow. That sounds like GM gold. And anarchy for the party. Yeah, amazing. You also promise not to harm any creature to whom you've offered hospitality or who has shown you hospitality, I assume it's going to say. It does. Whether or not the creature is fey, unless that creature does harm first. Refusing hospitality to a fey or violating hospitality causes you to lose the benefit of this feat until you atone for your transgressions, instantly reverting your appearance to the one you had before the pact. That is really random. So brilliant. And I just love the idea of having this instant, like, troll card as a GM and being like, so, you know, the kind of the memes like average so-and-so enjoyer versus, and there's that ridiculous kind of CGI kind of model face, right? So you've done that to your elf. Brilliant. Okay. 2 days later, there's a knock at the door and just absolutely mental, hard drinking, hard partying maniac fae turn up and hold Glastonbury in your garage for 3 days straight, making you massively unpopular with your neighbours. Just wonderful, like, meaningless but also massively meaningful fluff kind of mechanics there. Because yes, it doesn't have any impact potentially on a campaign, you know, but it does have a huge impact on role-playing potential and where those kind of encounters can spiral to when a fey prince that stayed at your house and had a fantastic time at Glastonbury decides he's going to abduct the mayor's daughter because he's taken a bit of a fancy to her, and then you're left in the difficult position of having to go into the fey realm and very kindly ask him for her back. You know, just so much fun to have there. Because yeah, Fae, don't pick that unless you want to court the anarchy. So that has already sold me on this class. I thought I was going to like Psychic quite a lot, and I do. And I thought, well, you know, Thermatage is probably all right. And having read that one, I'm moving in this direction. What else have we got? Something else that's equally as funny, I hope. Okay, that's a classic. That's useful. So share antithesis is one action. Obviously, your class feature, esoteric antithesis that we talked about earlier. You apply esoterica to an adjacent ally's weapon and body. That ally's strikes apply the weaknesses of your subject. So basically, you can start handing that ability out to the party, which, let's be honest, that's going to be helpful, especially if they're just not equipped for the situation you found yourselves in. It's very easily done. You know, a random encounter can suddenly throw a real curveball on things. So that's very cool, like that. So yeah, very, very unique class, and something that I think a lot of people will probably sleep on until they discover it and probably go, why have I not done this sooner? But yeah, like I said, Dark Tapestry content is clearly coming down the line. Obviously, there was a whole big adventure path, you know, dedicated to that kind of Cthulhu-esque. Well, they did it on Glass Cannon podcast. They did it as their live shows. They're still doing it as their live shows. So if you are someone that is into Cthulhu and those kind of games and you've not really thought about mainstream games because you're too cool for school and Pathfinder, we've got you covered. Come over and enjoy the dark side. As long as you wait till Gen Con 2022, because that's when this book, and I imagine supporting campaign content, will be gearing up to come into stream to support it. But yeah, very exciting. As per usual, everybody, links in the description below to download the playtest. Throw it in your games. Don't go, oh, well, we're mid-campaign, so I can't do anything, Phil. Don't give me this nonsense. Retire a character, have your fighter stub his toe. go, oh, I've stubbed my toe really badly and I can't adventure for at least 4 sessions while I playtest another class. I'm going to stay in the pub and I'll see you all later. And then have him going to the pub with his stubbed toe and coming out of the pub, have a psychic or a Thermatage and go, oh, I'm going to be joining you for 4 sessions to playtest this character. I hope you don't mind. You can just do that, and then you've playtested them, and then you can give feedback and you can give input, and you can take part in this wonderful process of refining and fettling the Pathfinder 2 new classes coming out in, as I mentioned, Gen Con 2022. Download it, have a good read through. Let me know in the comments below what you like, what you don't like. Play them, play test them, trial them. Even if you're not gaming right now, just throw together a little bit of Cuthullu, a little bit of, the Dark Tapestry. You could literally just bolt straight into some brilliant Pathfinder 1 adventures that are geared up around that kind of Dark Tapestry, kind of Lovecraftian kind of theme. Pick up some level 1s and 2s, run into it, run a short little kind of, campaign, put some feedback in, and then throw it in the bin and be like, well, we did that. That was us. Obviously, like, subscribe, stay tuned. Next week, I promise you all, on the Jurassic Park that we all know and love, all hail the Jurassic Park. I've made that a religion now. Feel free to put that on any census documents that you are a worshipper of Jurassic Park or Jedi. That's also acceptable. But yes, I will have a new camera set up, a new recording setup that I'm going to be getting to grips with, hopefully kind of tomorrow and early part of next week. So I shall be returning back to some of my more detailed content on some of the stuff that I've been digging through in Secrets of Magic. I'm going to do an update on my current campaign, which is all based in Tianzai, in the core Galarian world. We're currently adventuring through the Forest of Spirits, and I've gone for a very, not quite Lovecraftian, but there's an element of survival horror. It's definitely atmospheric. It's definitely, it's got that definite horror vibe. The Forest of Spirits is literally a kind of a frigid, like pine forest, Siberian style, full of eerie mists, and just rammed full of all sorts of horrible undead. Very cool, unique undead as well, that I've really enjoyed, kind of using the mists and the kind of the spirits that wander it to kind of tell little stories. Very cool setting, really enjoying it. So I'm going to do a little bit of an update on that, on what the characters are about, because now that I've got them established and they're kind of bedding in, I want to kind of show off some of the cool things you can do with Pathfinder 2, because they've come up with some very cool characters that I really like. So that's coming. So yeah, stay tuned, like, subscribe, and as per, I will catch you on the flip side. Peace.